We certainly have a lot to cover as we continue our coverage of Colorado flooding. We want to take you out to the Fort Collins area now, where 7 News reporter Lindsay Sablon has been for the last couple of days. And Lindsay, you're right there on Prospect?
Yes, we are on Prospect and just a little bit east of Timberline, and this is one of the several road closures that we are dealing with up here in Fort Collins. At that press conference that we had about 2.5 hours ago, the city manager here saying traffic is one of their biggest issues. He actually was, and I have to say this is relatively, because as we're looking at this, you're seeing major flooding. But he said, you know, they're not seeing a lot of destruction within the city as far as homes go. Obviously, there is a ton of flooding here, but that's hitting a lot of open space areas. So that is good news. But they still have all of the bridges in Fort Collins that run over the Poudre River blocked off except for Harmony. We really tried to push him and ask any timeline when some of those may open up, because it's a traffic nightmare around here. Basically, you can't get from North Fort Collins down south and vice versa. And you could just tell he was really reluctant to answer that question for so many reasons. One, they don't know what the weather is going to bring. And two, they're still trying to assess just how much these bridges can handle. And you can see why, just how much water is running over. The river, actually, if you may not realize this, is about 100 yards in this direction. So all of this flow we're seeing is just really overflow. Now I want to talk about what Sheriff Justin Smith told us a little bit earlier, and you guys have been mentioning this. They have a Type 2 team, incident team, taking over tomorrow, which is Saturday. It's made up of 50 people. Now we're not talking they're bringing in resources like helicopters or planes, but they're going to bring in those 50 people who are going to help with management. They did tell me they had one more request for another Black Hawk helicopter to maybe help with some of the rescue efforts in Big Thompson and Poudre Canyon, but they're still waiting for that. You can see people going through the water here right now. They're really, guys, trying to discourage us. I know people need to get back and forth, but they really don't want people moving through this water. It's moving pretty quickly, and it can get pretty powerful at times. But the other thing the sheriff was telling me was just that he flew, okay, I'm going to try to explain this, and he did it in about 20 minutes, so I'm going to do a bridged version. He flew from here up towards Big Thompson to see the Estes Park damage down south, and what he really said, and he saw Poudre Canyon and Big Thompson Canyon, and he said, surprisingly, Poudre Canyon, not too bad. Big Thompson Canyon, really another story there. He just said the destruction there is just unbelievable. He said in some places 17 miles of road that's just completely gone. Another area, I believe it was County Road 44. I want to make sure I'm getting this right. 40, I believe it was 44, Major, where he said 6 to 8 bridges that he believed were out, and he stopped counting at that point. 44H, thank you, Major. I apologize. I want to make sure I'm getting everything right now. And that's going, the switchback's going down. But for a moment, as we're talking about all these road closures and all the devastation that the sheriff saw, I do want to switch gears, because I know we've seen a lot and people are going through a lot, but there are moments of happiness and relief, if you will. And I want you to take a look at some video that Major King shot when we caught Poudre School District. There were some students up in Pingree Park, which is in Poudre Canyon, and they were out coming back after they'd been trapped. And I want you to just listen to their hooting and hollering for a second, if we can get that. We were driving after the press conference, saw these buses pull in, and thought, we think those are the students from Eco Week, which were up at Pingree Park in Poudre Canyon. And sure enough, parents were yelling, kids were yelling. We heard shouts of, hey, Mom, so happy to be back. They left on Wednesday. It's a normal trip that 6th graders take every year. They were supposed to learn all about the things up in Poudre Canyon. Then the flood happened, and the kids were stuck up there. But I have to say, parents and kids alike were in good spirits. Listen to what a couple had to say.
It was pretty cold and rainy a lot, and there were lots of mudslides, and we couldn't go to the hikes.
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling wonderful. Yes, I was very anxious. Me and my husband, we were very anxious, because this is the first time we ever sent him away, and it turned out to be so scary.
It sounds like a parent's nightmare. The first time you let your child go away for the week or the night, and that happens. But fortunately, Poudre School District was in touch with them the entire time. And again, those kids arriving back on their bus around 4 o'clock this afternoon. Back here live again, just the flooding really kind of right now, the weather holding out, but you can just see the constant movement of the Poudre River. The only other thing I want to mention, if you do know people up in Big Thompson or Poudre Canyon, the sheriff's saying today they do have a helicopter flying, and we've been seeing it nonstop since probably about, it was mid-morning, maybe around noon that time when the sun came out. And he said they were really focusing on getting medical response first, and then they would go in for everybody else. So I know there's a lot of people that are in Big Thompson and Poudre Canyon who are stranded right now, but they're responding to the people who are injured, and then they're going to go back in and help those other people out. And he said he saw a lot of activity from the air, people trying to help others out, maybe driving a mile or two back and forth. But again, he himself said he was, quote, overwhelmed by everything he saw, especially in Big Thompson Canyon. Guys, back to you.
Lindsay, let me ask you a question. Share with some of the folks who are just coming home, perhaps, and just getting some of this information. They didn't get to see the news conference live. Share a couple of points, a couple of extra points from that news conference, which was extensive there with the Larimer Sheriff. Things that stuck with you about what he had to say.
Yeah, you know, Mike, he really walked us through every single place that he looked, and the words that he threw around were decimated, deteriorated, bridges gone, and it was just, I remember him talking about Highway 7, a lot of damage there. He talked about Highway 34 and how he said, in fact, I believe, and I'm going to check my tweets now, I hope you don't mind, I'm going back through my notes because it was about a 45-minute press conference, but he said here, Big Thompson Canyon is, quote, decimated in the Narrows area. I can't tell you how many structures I saw that were absolutely destroyed. He went on to say that how we're going to get people out is just going to take a darn, I'll use that word, a PG word, a darn long time, again talking about the people stranded in Big Thompson Canyon. He also talked about Elk Meadows. He said he saw a lot of structures that may be gone on County Road 47. He really said it was hard to say just how many all the way up there, but he did see that. The one thing he made a note of for people who may be in that area, maybe starting to get a little bit of power, I know it's probably very unlikely, or if you have some contact, he said, I saw a lot of people driving around in the Big Thompson Canyon, and I want to warn people, it's going to be a while before we can get everybody out. Food and fuel are going to become an issue, and people need to, especially with the fuel, try to be very reserved with how much they're using, because we just don't know when we're going to be able to get everyone out. And he was really hopeful that when that Type 2 incident team came in tomorrow, not that they're not capable, but it will help with the management as far as all the agencies responding here, and they'll be able to kind of help Type 2 figure it out, and there'll be a lot easier communication and just response effort, because right now that is what they have to do. They have to respond to all the devastation, and especially, like I mentioned, the Big Thompson Canyon. The only other thing I didn't mention, Mike, from that press conference was Darren Atterbury did speak. He's the city manager here at Fort Collins, and there were 3 neighborhoods actually here in Fort Collins that were evacuated overnight, and those were Alta Vista, Buckingham, and then I'm missing one, Major. I'm sorry, I'm missing one, but right in that area right there. And anyway, they said that some of those people were coming home. They still weren't sure how much damage was done. I will tell you, Major King's son works at one of the stores in town, and he said all the sub pumps and all of the generators are gone. So we know that there's several flooding issues around here.
All right, being proactive. All right, Lindsay Sablon, thank you for that update. And just one more point on that travel issue. They are suggesting that in the counties of Boulder, Larimer, Weld, Jefferson, Clear Creek, and Gilpin, that you not travel unless it's absolutely necessary, just because of all of these conditions that they're worried about.